All right, good morning. I'm Charlie Craven. I've been Charlie Craven all day. And I'm going to tie for you an old Eastern pattern called a Letort hopper. And this is a good hopper if you're kind of getting into spinning and flaring deer hair. Kind of a good practice pattern, simple little pattern. This is one of the first hopper patterns I learned to tie when I was a kid. And, fairly buoyant little fly, but small. And I'm going to tie you a size 10. But you can tie this down to a 14 or 16 pretty easily for those little tiny hoppers. It'll also cross for a caddis, so a couple uses, double duty. And what I'm going to do here, I've got a 100 SPBL, size 10 here in the vise, and I've got some 3/0 Danville monocord in yellow. I'm going to tie you a yellow one. So I'm going to start this thread about a fourth of the way back from the hook eye, and make a thread base back to the bend. And when I get there, I'm going to come in with some pale yellow superfine dubbing. Now you could use whatever color dubbing you wanted for your hopper. Yellow is sort of typical. And I'm going to take, keep in mind this is a size 10 hook, so it's a fatter noodle than maybe you're used to making out of superfine. But I do want to twist that down tightly. And I'm going to start to wrap that at the bend. So I'll use up that bare thread and get back here to the bend. And I'm going to build a tapered body up to where I started the thread. And I want to fatten up that front shoulder about like so. So simple tapered body, nothing fancy there. Now for the wing, I've got mottled Ozark turkey wing is what this is. And what I've got here is I've cut a slip, and I have coated this with vinyl cement or clear fixative so that these fibers won't shred. And that's going to be important here. And what I want to do is by the butt end, that's the end that I cut off the stem, I want to cut that square, and then I'll fold that piece in half, and you want to try to get it as close to exactly in half as you can. And from the folded edge, I'm going to cut a long angle and then drop it and then pick it up and end up with something sort of like so. Now what I want to do with this is first I'm going to make a thread base up to the hook eye and back again to the front edge of the body. And I actually want to overlap onto the front edge of the body a bit there. And I'm going to measure this just past the bend of the hook and sort of buckle it around the shank and tie it down with a little band of thread there. So you can see that wing envelops the body. Then I can lift this butt end up and trim it out flush. I want to just smooth that off like so. From this point, you see you could add a hackle collar and have a pretty cool little tent wing caddis also. But what we're going to do here is we're going to take some deer hair. And I've got just natural whitetail deer hair here. And I'm going to cut a clump and clean it out. And run it through my stacker here. About like so. Okay, nice clean stack on that. Nice even tips. And I want to measure these tips so that they come about halfway up the wing. I'm going to cut this clump of hair a bit shorter, so I'm going to cut some of the butt ends off. So I'm going to take this clump of hair measured about halfway up the wing. I'm going to take 2 turns around this hair. I want the first turn, I can kind of pull on a little bit to sort of start to crease that hair and put the second turn in. And then I'm going to pull down and flare that hair in place. So I can kind of hold on to those. And then I can lift these butt ends up and start to work through them. Just in small increments. Then I'm going to take another bunch of hair, about the same size as the first, and in this case I'm only going to use the butt end, so I'm going to cut the tips off. I'm going to leave this fairly short, and I'm going to take the middle of this clump and line it up with the thread. And I'll put a turn around it and crease it, and another turn around it and crease it. Then I'm going to hold on to the hook and the collar and spin that bunch of hair around the hook. And I'll just work the thread forward through those butt ends. and your hook eye should just be just barely poking out there at the front. I'll bring my thread just up behind the eye, and then I can come in and whip finish there, just using the angle of the hook eye to hold the thread in place, and it only takes a couple turns. Then I'll nick that thread out of there, and now we're going to do the trimming portion. So this is hard for me to do in the vise, so I may try to hold it in my fingers just to kind of give you an idea what I'm doing, because I am right-handed. Let me switch this around and hold this fly in my left hand. And I've got a double-edged razor blade here that I've broken in half, and I'm going to start across the bottom of the fly and just make a flat cut. Like so. Then I'm going to come straight up the face of the fly, and you can see with a brand new blade, this is fairly easy to do. And then I'm just going to square the edges off on each side. And I don't typically do this on my desktop because you see it makes a giant mess. Now I'm going to come in from the front, and I don't want to cut at an angle. I want to cut straight back across the top of this head into those butt ends of that collar, and kind of nick those last few just with the edge of the blade. You can do sort of the final cleanup with scissors, and I may do that just because it's going to be a little easier for you to see. You can see the general shape of the fly there. Then I'll come in with my scissors and just lift these butt ends that are left and trim those off. You notice I can't talk when I'm doing this, so that I don't chop off what I shouldn't be chopping off. You can see I just use the tips of the scissors to isolate the hairs that I want to cut. Got a couple tips that rolled a little bit there. And I'll use the razor blade again just to square off that back edge a bit. Maybe clean his face up just a bit more as well to get a nice square head on him. Give him a couple little pops there. And that, oh, I don't like that hair right there. Why don't you guys tell me? We got to get that out of there. We'll catch no fish and be wondering why. You know, like all deer hair flies, knowing when to stop is half the battle. But that's a Letort hopper. Simple little fly, kind of a good one to practice both spinning the hair, flaring the hair, and then shaping it with a razor blade. That's not the cleanest Letort hopper I've ever tied, I'll admit that. But I'm happy enough, I guess. We'll call that good. But you can see that really slender little hopper profile from underneath. And that's what counts. Buoyant little fly and all natural materials too, so kind of cool in that vein. But there you go. That's Ed Shank's Letort hopper. Hope you guys enjoyed that, and we'll be back with more. Stay tuned. Take care.